Domo arigato, Mr. Palbato. Domo, 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 domo. Sam was sent down the stairs by her father. Domo, 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 domo. Paul says I will save her with the chip. Domo, 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 domo. Then Sam goes on a murderous rampage. Domo, 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 domo. I'm John Renton with the retro review of Deadly Friend from 1986, directed by Wes Craven, and boy, this movie reeked of studio interference. My goddamn goodness. 2 years after doing A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that being a smashing success, he wanted to go a different route. He wanted to do a PG sci-fi elemented possible love story between two crazy teens. And then the studio said, no, fuck you. We're investing $11 million in this goddamn thing, and we want this to be a slasher in the vein of Chopping Mall. And I know Chopping Mall came out around this time. I'm not exactly sure which one came out first. The whole point is the Chopping Mall had robots in a mall. Not necessarily chopping people up, but just destroying people because they were supposed to be security, and it had some fun elements, but wasn't necessarily great as far as acting or really a narrative. But it had some fun kills. This movie had a couple okay kills, but boy, it just, the tonal inconsistencies. My word. If you don't know who the fuck Wes Craven is, by the way, besides A Nightmare on Elm Street, he also did People Under the Stairs. He would revive the slasher genre with Scream, and then he would continue that success with Scream 2, and then Scream 3 would happen, and 1 hardly needs to go on at that point, and then he would do Scream 4, which I believe would end up being his last directorial film before he died in 2015. Did he have consistent hits? No. But was he a pretty damn good director? Yes. So, this was written by the guy who did Ghost, Deep Impact, and Stuart Little. And was based on an alleged novel, evidently, by Diana Henstall. This was a novel. People could just write anything back in the 80s. Then again, when you had Fear Street, and later Goosebumps, and you had Christopher Pike and stuff like that, yeah, you really could write just about anything. So you have Matthew Laboratoru, whatever. He's the guy that played Albert in Little House on the Prairie, if you remember that show, if you are fucking ancient like I am. He is Paul, who is not Paul anymore, he's Super Paul. He's a new kid that moves into town, had his mother, who I assume was somebody's wife at that point, who was played by Anne Toomey, and she basically is just trying to make sure that her son continues his studies. Paul is very smart as far as science and robotics and stuff like that. He has a robot named BB. BB, get out of my laboratory. BB actually is like if Johnny Five was not only alive, but very sentient. Short Circuit, by the way, for those that are under the age of, being under the dirt, like me. So basically, this robot rolls around and everything. We get a few little indications that maybe the technology isn't all that great, and BB is more sentient and will defend Paul, but also maybe is a little destructive. And then after the robot is destroyed, Sam, who made the pants too long and also was abused by her father, played by Christy Swanson, who apparently was only 16 at this point, and didn't exactly have the best experience on set, apparently. Nothing against Wes Craven, but it's just, I guess they kind of treated her maybe like, a bit of a dumb teenager. She was in the movie adaptation of Buffy that would lead to the Buffy TV series. That was great for the cast, not great for Joss Whedon having success, given how piece of shit he turned out to be. She was also in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And then you have Tom, not Tom Sawyer, Michael Sharnett. God damn it, Michael Sharnett. Let's just say that. And then you also had Anne Ramsey, who was Mama in The Goonies, who unfortunately would pass away about 2 years after this due to a battle with cancer. May she rest in peace. And then you had Richard Marcus also. Actually a fairly loaded cast for an $11 million budgeted movie, which would be about $32 million in today's money. It Opened up with 3.8 million, so not the worst, and it would make, which would be 11.2 million in today's money. And a $9 million intake worldwide, just around 9 million. I'm rounding it up because it's like 11 grand off. $26.5 million in today's money. So we start off with a backseat choking robot. That is not a euphemism. It is a guy that tries to break into a truck and then gets choked out by a robot. That just happens to be there. You know, I knew a backseat choking robot at one point. Well, she sounded like a robot, but she actually was... She didn't have much personality, but man, she... Moving on. Let's just move on from that. It's better to be seen and not heard sometimes, but I'll move on again. And BB basically rolls around with Paul. And then Tom, they have this recurring thing where Tom crashes on his bike a few times. Badly, I might add. I'm not saying that Michael should have taken a lot of bumps, but still. So, basically, you can teach a robot to do anything, like landscaping, which will pretty much just take the landscaping crews out of the goddamn thing. So no matter, as long as the ground is flat and there's no moles and everything, and you just have to do one patch of grass, you're okay. Sam is being abused by her dad. Her dad that basically is over-the-top goofy and not necessarily in a I want to see him get killed way. I'm not even knocking the actor, I'm talking the character. But... again, this reeks of studio interference because the idea was a sci-fi love story thing where, you know, Sam would wrestle with her humanity and the robotic tendencies. And I don't mind having to go the horror route, but the thing is, it feels too much like a suburban shopping mall, just without the fun. And even when the movie tries to have fun, it just does not feel like it is going to work. And Wes Craven, bless him, got the most out of this, even though there wasn't much to get out of it. So, you have Carl and his goon squad. Your balls are being choked, Carl. Anyway, so, yeah, BB gets him by the nuts. Just the old testicular claw. And then the dad is very creepy. It turns out to be a nightmare because he's being very... The mother left him, so I guess he feels he can abuse his daughter. I'm guessing he probably abused the mother. Maybe he killed the mother for all I fucking know. And Anne plays Elvira. Thankfully not dressed like Elvira, because rest in peace, Anne. Nobody wanted to fucking see that. It's like if a bulldog gained sentience in human hair. I'm sorry, that's mean. So, BB basically goes rogue, trying to get a basketball back, and then gets shot up. By the way, the BB robot apparently cost 20 grand to make. So, I mean, whatever, it was what it was. So, then Sam falls down some stairs. That's what you get for not making the pants long enough, or making the pants too long, that is. Ruined my own bit right there, my own bit that I stole from the Barbra Streisand song. And Tom's idea is, hey, we are going to take her body before they pull her off life support and save her. Eh? Eh? I mean, Christy Swanson, like, I get wanting to save maybe your first... I get Paul wanting to save maybe his first crush. This seems a little bit misguided, and it turns out to be very misguided as a film and as a narrative. So, he basically gets Tom to help him because it's Tom's fault that the robot got shut up. Actually, if you had just gotten another basketball, it wouldn't have been a problem. Basketballs weren't that expensive in the 80s. They really weren't. I mean, I know it's a plot device, but still. The overacting after, or during the hospital invasion where Paul somehow had all this planned out and just needed Tom to cut the power, but he cut it too soon, and then he managed to get her, but they cut her stuff off too early, like her life support. Oh yes, and by the way, the reason that the mother was not aware of any of this is because they drugged her. Alright, apparently Harvey Weinstein had something to do with this. So, Paul basically is able to save Sam, but Tom is not so sure about all this there, even though they managed to implant the brain chip from BB in this. He was able to get that back? somehow, despite the fact that Anne Ramsey had like multiple shotgun shells in her goddamn house. But essentially, he is just trying to control Sam, and then Sam wants to go on a murderous rampage. By the way, IBM is mentioned. Anybody that know that's a certain age, like, again, me, that should be put in the ground at this point, you remember IBM computers. And, of course, as not a Wes Craven movie, if we do not have a furnace scene, apparently people never learn to stay away from furnaces in Wes Craven movies, and the dad is burned and then choked. And that's really about it. And then dark smoke comes out of the chimney, which means another robotic pope has been chosen. And then we get the infamous, pretty much the only scene I think that anybody has seen from this. If you've never seen the movie, you've probably seen this. Where Anne Ramsey's just sitting there, just seemingly forever. Christy Swanson throws a basketball at her head, and the basketball just smashes her head. And apparently, there were a lot of like takes of her throwing that ball really hard. Not necessarily smashing the face. And by the way, it was a clear dummy. You big dummy, Fred Sanford's son. But basically, boom, 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 there you go. So that was probably the scene that people remember the most. It is not justifying the fact that the movie exists. This movie is pretty goddamn bad. Has a little bit of charm, but again, studio interference and all that. So, how is the mom not aware of any of this stuff going on? Tom can't stay quiet, by the way, while all this is going on and wants to go to the police. And at one point, Paul bops him in the nose. Sam sees a picture, apparently that was taken, of Paul, BB, and, Sam, but obviously having BB's brain, freaking out, all that stuff. And then Tom's going to leave on his bike to go to the police. And then literally, Sam spear tackles him out the secondary window. Secondary window. Apparently the fish from Finding Nemo is here. The second story window is what I'm trying to say. But hits a spear tackle from the second window to the ground. And you thought the Edge Jeff Hardy WrestleMania 17 spot was insane. So, she basically attacked but then runs off. And there you are. So then Carl, you're the last victim, Carl. And Carl ends up basically thrown by Sam onto a police squad car as opposed to a non-police squad car, and then takes off. Ends up back at the house. Finally, it clicks that maybe Sam can wrestle with her humanity and her robotic nature. But then she freaks out, glitches, does the weird Vulcan thing that she's been doing this the whole movie. And then runs at the cop, gets shot, and then basically ends up at the morgue. Paul goes to rescue her again, not learning anything from these previous experiences. But then, suddenly, it's either a nightmare or a hook for a possible sequel that we never got because the movie bombed. Bomb, I guess, is a little bit wrong, but it just didn't do as well as the studio thought. But suddenly, the robot face and the robot arms and everything are coming out of Christy Swanson's body, proving what we've all known about her. I kid, of course. And then Paul's neck gets snapped off camera. I mean, I guess. That's Deadly Friend right there. It wasn't necessarily something great. Well, that being said, it's a fine time capsule. It's almost 40 years old. And, the effects aren't bad. It's just tonally inconsistent with studio interference just draped over it like a shroud. Anyway, so agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Redland. Until we resurrect a 16-year-old blonde in the 80s again, happy trails to you.